working to connect a region of over 600 new bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Malang Stadium, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus. On tonight's headlines. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command condemned North Korea's missile launch over Japan, saying that Washington's commitments to the defense of Japan and South Korea remain ironclad. At least 32 children died in Indonesia's stadium crush, according to an official, as police moved to punish those responsible for one of the deadliest disasters in football history. The Tourism Authority of Thailand announced that starting October 1, international travelers to Thailand will no longer be required to show proof of vaccination or antigen test results. The Presidential Task Force on Media Security, or PITFOMS, condemned the senseless killing of veteran broadcaster Percival Mabasa, more popularly known as Percy Lapid, who was shot to death on Aria Street, Santa Cecilia Village, Talon dos Las Piñas City, Monday night. First in our news, North Korea fired a mid-range ballistic missile today, which flew over Japan, according to Seoul and Tokyo. A significant escalation as Pyongyang ramps up its record-breaking weapons testing blitz. Let's listen in first.
先ほど、北朝鮮が弾道ミサイルを発射し、我が国上空を通過し、太平洋上に落下したとみられます。最近の度重なる弾道ミサイルの発射に続く暴挙であり、強く非難をいたします。
If Pyongyang has fired a missile over Japan, that would represent a significant escalation over its recent provocations, according to Leif Erik Easley, a professor at Ewha University in Seoul. He said the Kim regime is developing weapons such as tactical nuclear warheads and submarine-launched ballistic missiles as part of a long-term strategy to outrun South Korea in an arms race and drive wedges among us allies. South Korea's military said it had detected one suspected medium-range ballistic missile that was launched from Mupyeong-ri area of Jagang province at around 7:23 a.m. Local time today and passed over Japan in the eastern direction. In a statement, the Joint Chiefs of Staff said the military was maintaining a full readiness posture and closely cooperating with the U.S. while strengthening surveillance and vigilance. According to the Diplomat website, many Filipinos are concerned that a North Korean nuclear test could directly threaten the territory of the Philippines. These fears are premised on past experience. In December 2012, debris from a North Korean rocket landed off the coast of northern Luzon, heightening concerns in Manila about Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. Also, the website said the heightened prospect of a military confrontation between North Korea and South Korea has increased concerns in Manila about the welfare of migrant workers, Filipino migrant workers in South Korea. Meanwhile, the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command condemned North Korea's missile launch over Japan today, saying that Washington's commitment to the defense of Japan and South Korea remain ironclad. It said the U.S. condemns these actions and calls on the DPRK to refrain from further unlawful and destabilizing acts, it said in a statement issued on Monday local time using the official abbreviation for North Korea. The last time North Korea fired a missile over Japan was in 2017. At the height of a period of fire and fury when Pyongyang's leader Kim Jong-un traded insults with then U.S. President Donald Trump. Japanese and South Korean troops will act as observers for the first time in this year's iteration of the Kaagapay ng mga Mandirigma ng Dagat or Kamandag exercise, which runs from October 3 to 14 in various areas in the country. The primary participants in the training activity are the Philippine Marine Corps and the U.S. Marine Corps. Take a look. I think this is the first time both the Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force and the Korean Armed Forces will be participating, but they will be here as observers, according to the Philippine Navy Acting Flag Officer in Command, Rear Admiral Cesar Bernard Valencia, in a press briefing during the exercise's opening rites at the Philippine Navy Officers Club in Fort Bonifacio in Taguig City. He also added that these troops could only participate in humanitarian assistance and disaster response training, or HADR. Valencia said the Kamandag is a bilateral exercise between the USMC and the PMC, so it's basically limited to that, and they will just be here as participants, as observers, and perhaps in HADR operations. With the threat posed by climate change, he noted that there could be more robust activities and participation in HADR operations. Kamandag translates to Cooperation of the Warriors of the Sea. Around 530 PMC and 2,550 USMC personnel are joining the exercise, along with 100 members of the ROK Marine Corps and 30 from the JGSDF. The U.S. troops will be coming from the U.S. 31st and 11th Marine Expeditionary Units. Some 100 members of the Philippine Navy and Air Force will also join the exercise. The exercise aims to enhance bilateral cooperation and interoperability among participating forces in the conduct of combined tactical operations that focus on capacitating the Marine Amphibious Ready Unit and enhancing their capabilities in special operations, coastal defense capability, HADR operations, and chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear operations. As government representatives begin to finalize the agenda for the COP27 climate change conference in Egypt next month, for pre-COP planning in the Democratic Republic of the Congo capital, Kinshasa, Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez told journalists in New York that the work ahead is as immense as the climate impacts we are seeing around the world. He mentioned the Philippines and other countries being hammered by recent climate events. Take a look.
As immense as the climate impacts we are seeing around the world. A third of Pakistan flooded. Europe's hottest summer in 500 years. The Philippines hammered. The whole of Cuba in blackouts. And here in the United States, Hurricane Ian has delivered a brutal reminder that no country and no economy is immune from the climate crisis. While climate chaos gallops ahead, climate action has stalled. COP27 is critical, but we have a long way to go. Let's be clear, the collective commitments of G20 governments are coming far too little and far too late. The actions of the wealthiest developed and the emerging economies simply don't add up. Taken together, current pledges and policies are shutting the door on our chance to limit global temperature rise to 2 degrees Celsius, let alone meet the 1.5-degree goal.
He said COP27 is the #1 litmus test of how seriously governments take the growing climate toll on the most vulnerable countries. He also urged the world to act at the pre-COP27 talks against what he called a life-or-death struggle for our own safety today and our survival tomorrow. Delegates from over 50 countries are attending the 2-day informal talks in Kinshasa, including U.S. climate envoy John Kerry. The event winds up on Wednesday with side discussions. The UN Conference on Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, urges advanced economies to change course in their monetary and fiscal policies to avert global recession. Excessive monetary tightening and inadequate financial support leave developing countries exposed to cascading crises of debt, health, and climate, underlined UNCTAD in its annual report on trade and development released today. Take a look.
We are in a world of cascading and interconnected crises: climate change, COVID-19, and the war in Ukraine. As the Secretary General of the UN has said, we are in a perfect storm. It is a difficult moment, no doubt, for all of us, but also for policymakers, because choices matter. The synchronized slowdown is hitting all regions, but is ringing alarm bells for developing countries. Our calculations show that average growth rate in developing countries will drop below 3%, as it did actually in the lost decade of 1980s. Some 90 developing countries have seen their currencies weaken against the dollar this year. 90 developing countries. And over a third of them have seen that by more than a 10% devaluation. We need to prioritize progress on a multilateral legal framework for handling debt restructuring, including all official and private creditors. And we also recommend a program of reforms in developing economies to boost productive investment and constrain capital moving to exploit tax loopholes.
The global economy is not yet in a recession. It's heading towards one, and there are downside risks that could push it into one, depending on how policymakers, particularly in the advanced economies, respond to the current situation. So I think it's really watching what policymakers are going to do over the course of the next 4 to 6 months.
Currently, 46 developing countries are severely exposed to multiple economic shocks, and another 48 seriously exposed, heightening the threat of a global debt crisis. The report concludes the situation in developing countries is much more tenuous than recognized by the G20, which is headed by Indonesia and other international financial fora, with talk of a global financial safety net increasingly at odds with their reality. Developing countries have already spent an estimated $379 billion of reserves to defend their currencies this year, almost double the amount of new special drawing rights recently allocated to them by the International Monetary Fund, and have also suffered significant impact from capital flight. In tonight's other news, at least 32 children died in Indonesia's stadium crush, according to an official on Monday, as police move to punish those responsible for one of the deadliest disasters in football history. The tragedy on Saturday night in the city of Malang saw a total of 125 people killed and 323 others injured after officers fired tear gas in a packed stadium to quell a pitch invasion triggering a stampede. Indonesian football journalist Firzi Idris says Indonesia needs to reform crowd control techniques during sporting events. Take a look.
I don't think they know exactly how to do, how to manage an escalation of conflict inside an enclosed space like a football stadium. The fact that they resort readily to tear gas is a big problem. What can they do better? Well, perhaps it needs a real reshuffling of what we know as crowd safety management now in football-related terms. More use of CCTV to identify the source of the problems, to identify the spark before it lit the fire, to learn more about crowd dynamics. The fatality numbers of 129, and it could go up, is just unacceptable in 2022. It could happen in Hillsborough in 1989, or other tragic events like in Accra in Ghana, and one other in Chile, if I'm not mistaken, in 1964, but not and never should happen in 2022.
As anger mounted against police, Indonesia's Chief Security Minister Mahfud MD announced a task force had been formed to investigate and called for punishment for anyone found responsible. The police force sacked its local chief in Malang within hours of the minister's speech. East Java Police also suspended 9 officers on the instruction of the National Police Force. National Police spokesman Dedi Prasetyo told a press conference without providing details about their role in the tragedy. Saturday's incident unfolded when fans of home team Arema FC stormed the pitch at the Kanjuruhan Stadium after their loss 3-2 to bitter rivals arrivals per Sibaya, Surabaya. Police responded by launching tear gas into packed terraces, prompting spectators to rush en masse to small gates where many were trampled or suffocated, according to witnesses. In other news, developing and upgrading the country's digital payment system is the priority of the government's financial managers before engaging in central bank digital currency, CBDC. Department of Finance Secretary Benjamin Diokno told senators on Monday. A study by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in 2021 to find out the feasibility of digital currency concluded that it's not yet worthwhile for the Philippines at the moment. Diokno said other countries try to engage in central bank digital currency because of the proliferation of digital currencies that are not backed up by their central banks. He also warned that digital currency is dangerous, especially if it is not backed up by a central bank. Take a look.
Ang sinabi nila, I think we should, because we have a parallel system, yung PesoNet at InstaPay, take muna natin before we go into CBDC. Yun ang resulta ng pag-aaral. Yung impetus po ng central bank digital currency is because of the proliferation of yung tinatawag na digital currency po na hindi backup ng central bank. Dangerous po noon. Kaya nagkaroon na ngayong kaaral ng mga central bankers na sila mismo mag-i-issue ng digital currency.
Referring to Bitcoin.
Yes. Kaya, yes.
But these are gaining grounds. Will they permit to Union Bank?
I don't think so. In fact, marami pong nag-collapse na ng mga digital currency na unbanked by central banks.
What about the permit given to the Union Bank of the Philippines for them to engage in digital transactions?
Experimental pa rin po yan. That's not pervasively used by citizens, for example. So yun naman lagi po sinasabi namin huwag kayong maglalaro dyan kasi you'll get burned. Kasi unless you have money to burn, huwag kayong maglalaro dyan. Kasi napaka-speculative po yun
Digital currency, also called digital money, electronic currency, cryptocurrency, or cybercash, is accessible only with computers or mobile phones. It's more convenient but also susceptible to hacking. The Tourism Authority of Thailand announced that starting October 1st, international travelers to Thailand will no longer be required to show proof of vaccination or antigen test results. They're also offering a longer length of stay, signaling the completion of the kingdom's full reopening to international tourism. According to travelnews.com, effective October 1st through until March 31 next year, the period of stay in Thailand will be extended to 45 days from 30 days for tourists from countries, territories entitled for visa exemption, and to 30 days from 15 days for those eligible for a visa on arrival or VOA. According to the Tiger.com, Public Health Minister Anutin Charnivarakul said the committee decided to redefine COVID-19 as a communicable disease under surveillance. New measures would be adopted based on locals, visitors, and infected people. Such measures include advising infected people to continue to use face masks and increasing hand washing and social distancing for 5 days. After the 5 days, the restriction that would normally require a COVID test has been lifted as well. The move comes as the Department of Disease Control Deputy Director General concluded that current coronavirus symptoms are not appearing to be severe, with many infected people displaying only cold-like symptoms. But infected people may have to follow specialized disease control policies at their workplaces that could be more strict. In other news today, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince and Prime Minister Mohammed bin Salman, or MBS as he's known, is expected to visit the Philippines before the end of this year, according to the Department of Foreign Affairs. It is uncertain yet if the trip would be a state visit, but Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary Alfonso Ver said preparations are nevertheless underway. Manila would be part of Prince Mohammed's multi-country trip in Asia, which would include Malaysia, Thailand, Pakistan, and Brunei, according to Mr. Ver. At present, the two countries are rushing talks to ready possible agreements that could be signed when the Crown Prince arrive. Mr. Ver said part of the meeting between Filipino officials and Saudi Arabia's Foreign Minister Prince Faisal bin Farhan Al Saud, who visited Manila on Thursday, was to lay the initial plans for Prince Mohammed's trip. There are at least 30 pending agreements between the Philippines and Saudi Arabia, but among the deals the DFA is hoping to get signed are on double taxation and investment promotion. Based on the recent Manila trip of Foreign Minister Faisal, Mr. Ver said Saudi Arabia was interested in forging closer economic cooperation with the Philippines. In other news, the Presidential Task Force on Media Security, or PITFOMS, condemned the senseless killing of veteran broadcaster Percival C. Mabasa, more popularly known as Percy Lapid, who was shot to death on Arias Street, Santa Cecilia Village, Talon 2, Las Piñas City on Monday night. The task force assured that it will not rest until the perpetrators of this heinous crime are brought to justice. Based on the initial report submitted by Las Piñas City Police Chief Colonel Jaime Santos, the victim, while driving along Arias Street on board his black Toyota Innova at around 8:30 p.m., was shot by two gunmen on a motorcycle without a plate number, causing his instantaneous death. The victim's vehicle crashed at the gate of DF Resort Village. While it's still too early to establish the motive behind the incident, the PITFOMS will presume the killing to be work-related as a matter of procedure so that the full might of the Presidential Task Force will be brought to bear against the perpetrators. Media security vanguards are PITFOMS focal persons composed of PNP's public information officers, or PO, and serve as the first line of defense of journalists all over the country, as they will be the first to receive and respond to all threats leveled against any media worker. Social media sites could be blocked or fined in Singapore if they fail to stop users in the tightly controlled-led country from accessing harmful content under a proposed law introduced in Parliament Monday. Under the bill, regulators can order social media platforms to block egregious content, including posts advocating violence and terrorism or depictions of child sexual exploitation. Content that poses a public health risk or that is likely to cause racial and religious disharmony in Singapore is also included, according to the Ministry of Communications and Information in a statement on Monday. The ministry said while some online services have made efforts to address harmful content, the prevalence of harmful online content remains a concern, given the high level of digital penetration and pervasive usage of online services among Singapore users, including children. Regulators can also order platforms to block a specific account from being accessed by users in Singapore, but the orders will not apply to private communications. Online communication services with significant reach or impact in Singapore may also be required to introduce measures to prevent Singapore users, particularly children, from accessing harmful content, according to the ministry, without naming the platforms. Parliament will debate the bill in November. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.